This segment brought to you by Bravo Company USA. This episode is produced by CCW Safe and FTA. Hey gang, welcome back to the Larry Vickers podcast, presented to you by Firearms Trainers Association. This segment is all about my favorite guns. Now, I've got a ton of favorite guns. I have guys. So what if you had one gun you had to pick, and what's your favorite? It's like, oh my god, it's like asking a car guy what his favorite car is. In this segment, I want to go through three of my favorites. All right, it's the ones that kind of are near and dear to me. First one up is basically an example of the first rifle that I was given by my dad when I was a little kid. Not exactly the same one. As I remember, it had a longer barrel, thinner barrel profile, longer barrel profile, if I remember correctly. And unfortunately, I went in the Army. My dad passed away. My mom did the classic thing. He only owned a couple guns. My dad, a 22 and a shotgun and a 22 Magnum, called somebody up and say, hey, come get these guns out of the house. That whole routine that widows do every day around the country. Guns are long gone. I have no idea where they're at. I'd love to find that original 22. But it was essentially this gun, a Winchester model 67A, single shot. Gave it to me when I was little, and I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for this rifle. Single shot, very simple design, bolt action, obviously, manual fed, you feed it one at a time. Doesn't even have an extractor per se, it has a little extractor there, and then you feed it, and then you have to cock it right here. And then the safety, pull it back, and you have to rotate this, and that puts it on safe. Pretty cool gun in a lot of ways. I mean, simple. I can imagine how cheap this thing was back in the day. Rear sight, tangent style slider rear sight, which is real common for that time frame. You see the style front sight that you got there, basically kind of a U-notch, and then a little silver dot, so to speak, or a round ball up front. From what I remember, I could do some pretty good work with this gun. And then a couple things about it. This is the gun that I discovered the fact that I was left eye dominant with. Because I remember I'm right-handed, I'm out in the backyard shooting, and I figured out, you know what, maybe I can see the sights if I try to put the gun on the other shoulder. So I tried, put the gun up on the left shoulder, and I discovered I can see the sights a lot better when I shoot left-handed. And from that point on, I've shot a long gun left-handed. And it was simply me experimenting to see how well I could see the sights in the backyard. Even though I was right-handed. I still shoot a pistol right-handed, and I just use my left eye to line up the sights. Like I said, single shot, not magazine fed, very simple design. A lot of stamped sheet metal involved. Plenty accurate, plenty reliable for what it is. Real simple design. I'm sure it doesn't have a chrome line bore and chamber like I would expect you to ask from something like an M16 or an M4. You could shoot some pretty good distance with it. It's a 22 long rifle. I also remember being able to shoot 22 short in it, and it says right here 22 short or 22 long rifle. Made by Winchester back in the day when they were up in Connecticut, New Haven, Connecticut. This one I found on Gunbroker. If memory serves me correct, it wasn't a lot of money, and it's in great shape. This gun's probably, made in the 60s if I had to guess. Mine was probably as well. So you're talking about a gun that's pretty significantly old. And for it to be in as good a shape as it's in. I'll probably end up doing a YouTube video with it at some point. I figured I'd introduce it to you guys first on the podcast. Model 67A, and I didn't even remember what it was called. I just remember it being a 22 bolt action single shot rifle. So I started Googling and searching what it was. I never remember calling it. I certainly didn't call it the Model 67A when I was little. It was just a 22 rifle. So I started to Google images and details and specifications of different rifles of that era, and then I found, I went, man, that's it. I recognized the cocking piece, I recognized the bolt handle, I recognized all that, and I knew as it turned out to be, a Model 67A. I do remember, however, like I said, the barrel being longer and a thinner profile. I think that's about the only difference.
How old were you when you got it?
You know, I'm going to say I was probably about 8 or 9 years old when I first got it. I'm going to say I was about 8 or 9 years old. And I remember it was a big deal. And my dad was real big on, it was interesting. Dad was a World War II vet. Never really got on me about having my finger on the trigger, but one thing he was adamant about was having the muzzle down. He was a muzzle awareness guy and always had the muzzle pointed down. And he never even, I don't think he ever told me about keep your finger off the trigger. He just, hey, have it pointed down. It kind of makes me wonder if maybe that didn't go back to his World War II experience where, hey, as long as you have the muzzle pointed in a safe direction, even if something good happens, nobody's going to get hurt. But I remember that was his big thing, his muzzle down. Had to have the muzzle pointed down. He never did talk to me about keeping the finger off the trigger. Cool gun.
Did you work for ammo? How'd you get your ammo?
Yeah, basically that's it. I mean, worked for ammo. My dad would, buy me some ammo. And the thing, I mean, it's a single shot, so everything's manual. We got to take it in, take it out, cock it, and all that kind of stuff. So if you got a box of ammo, it lasts you a while. It's not like an auto-loading weapon or something like today. I mean, if I had 20 or 30 rounds, I could make that last. We had some railroad tracks behind my backyard, and I'd go over there and walk in the woods and go around and find different stuff to shoot at and whatnot like that. Not always critters. Sometimes I might shoot at who knows, an old can or whatever the case may be. But this is what started it right here. I remember going over to the neighbor with it and showing the neighbor and showing off my fancy 22 that my dad gave me. It was basically his rifle that he just said, here, you can have it now. It wasn't like he went out and bought it for me. It was a rifle he had and said, here, you can have it. And it was my first rifle, first firearm of any kind. And now that started where we're at today. Winchester Model 67A, LAV first rifle. Got another LAV favorite coming your way. Stay tuned. Next up on the LAV favorites list is the FNFL. Been a big FAL fan for a number of years. I got a real extensive FAL collection. Love the gun. To me, it is the classic, definitive 7.62 NATO battle rifle. Also like battle rifles, I like the G3. I like a lot of different versions of guns in that flavor, but the FNFL has to be my favorite. I wanted to pick this one because this one is one of the most unique ones in the United States and has a really, really cool story behind it. If you're a guy that follows the FAL files and you get on that forum, this gun is often mentioned on there and lusted about as kind of considered to be the holy grail of semi-automatic FALs in the United States. Here's the story behind it. It is a Belgian-made South African contract FAL. Now here's the story I got from the guy I bought it from. Well, the gun wasn't cheap, but as you can imagine, it's irreplaceable. He told me that back in the day, his father was friends with some of the Soldier of Fortune guys. And during the Soldier of Fortune convention, that was during the whole South African Bush War and Rhodesia and all that kind of stuff. They had a lot of guys coming over from South Africa and whatnot coming to the Soldier of Fortune convention. And they brought a couple rifles over as display. They were going to look at potentially selling semi-automatic FALs, R1s. This is a Belgian-made South African contract R1. All right. They were going to have these guns over here, and they had them on display, and they were going to offer them for sale. And what they did at the end, they brought two of them, this is as the story goes, and they offered the guns, one to Robert K. Brown, who was the founder of Soldier of Fortune, and then another one to another guy on the Soldier of Fortune staff. And they gave them to him as gifts. And that's how these guns got in the country, supposedly two of them. Fast forward, this guy's father was a big knife guy. And the guy who had this rifle, not Robert K. Brown, but the Soldier of Fortune staff member that had this rifle, was also a big knife guy. So they ended up doing some horse trading, and he traded the Soldier of Fortune staffer for this rifle in exchange for X number of rare and exotic knives or whatnot. This gun ended up in the hands of his son down the road, and then ultimately ended up in the hands of me. Very cool gun. Does not have the correct contract furniture on it. This is actually South African furniture per se, the buttstock South Africa and whatnot. The R1 as contracted by South Africa as made in Belgium had a wood buttstock. All right, and then as time went on, the South Africans started making the guns in-house. They started making the guns in-country. And I've been down to South Africa and saw like their very first gun in a museum on display. I believe it has a plaque on it and whatnot. And it's the first contract gun made in country. This particular one, you can see, has the MU markings on it, which is more or less the South African military acceptance stamp, if you will, kind of a DOD stamp. Now on this side also, the Belgian-made South African contract FALs had the crest on it. And as a matter of fact, you'll see FALs, and I even did a video on one for my YouTube channel, that were supplied by South Africa to Rhodesia, and South Africa wanted to try to maintain some deniability. They would mill this out, and they would use a Dremel or a grinder or whatnot, and they would grind out the MU markings over here. So in theory, they would have deniability on where the gun came from. And if you look in, or if you watch my YouTube video on the Rhodesian FAL, you'll see that I'm shooting in the video an FAL, which is in fact a South African contract gun that has that done. Now, the guns that they made in country did not have that. They had MU markings, but they were a little bit different format, different serial number range, and they did not have the crest. Those were only on Belgian-made South African contract FALs. Another thing you see up here, grenade launcher front sight assembly that flips up like that, and then you rotate it around and you can lock it in place. It not only provides for you to launch a rifle grenade and use this as your grenade launcher sight, but also cuts off the gas. Pretty cool little setup. Plastic hand guards, you can see, has a standard G1 style carrying handle with plastic with the ribs. Then the plastic buttstock, which you see for the South African contract guns, but the ones they made in country. This particular buttstock was one they most likely made in South Africa. And like I said, the guns that came from Belgium for the contract down there had wood buttstocks. Pretty cool gun. Mint condition. I have not shot it. It's been shot a little bit. You can see some of the brass kiss marks right there. It's not been shot much. It's all matching. So it has all matching serial numbers right here, both upper and lower, and then the bolt and bolt carriers all matching, as well as the barrel. Really neat gun. As far as semi-automatic FALs go in this country, this is about as cool as it gets. Right here. The guys who follow the FAL files that know what this gun is are definitely going to be lusting after it. So, gun number 2 on this podcast, LAV Favorites, FNFL, and I figured I'd grab a really, really cool, unique example of what has to be my favorite battle rifle of all time, FNFL. Hey, here's a tip for you, brought to you from Larry Vickers and CCW Safe. It's about lubing your carry gun. One of the things I see no matter where I go and no matter who I train is people don't lube their guns right. Now, also understand something. There's different ways to lube your gun, whether it's you're going to go attend a class over a weekend and shoot the better part of 1,000 rounds. That requires a different level of lubrication, and also it requires you be on top of the lubrication more so than for concealed carry. But you need to understand, you don't run your gun bone dry in your holster. You need to think about what kind of lubricant I'm going to use on my concealed carry pistol. Also, is that lubricant going to bleed out when it gets 90 or 100 degrees out and get all over my clothing? So you need to be thinking about that kind of stuff, and also understand you don't want to be running these guns bone dry. I wouldn't want to risk the fact that I'm betting my life on a gun that hasn't seen lubricant or cleaning in the latest presidency. So you make sure you keep this thing lubed and with the proper lube for your concealed carry piece. All right? That's a major issue I see in my classes, and it's something you need to be aware of. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one. LAV out. Hey gang, rifle number 3 here for LAV Favorites on this podcast is AK-74. Big AK fan. I mean, I love AKs. I have a big AK collection. I got some real rare ones. It would have been, I could have had any number of guns up here. I happen to pick this one because it's really the closest thing to a real Izvesk Ishmash made AK-74 side folder that was ever imported in this country. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, K-Bar, several years ago, actually it was Arsenal USA, brought in, they had a connection with Izvesk, and they brought in some Siegas in 545, and they had side folder in the AK-100 series polymer stocks. They had also side folder triangle stocks, and I ended up swapping out with putting the Russian plum furniture on it and putting a plum mag in it. These essentially were semi-automatic AK-74s that were brought in from Russia. All right, and they opened up the mag well and all that jazz and made them legit. But this is the closest thing that we ever had imported into this country that is a true Russian-made AK-74. Semi-auto, and like I said, they had not only this version with the triangle side folder stock, but also the AK-100 series stock. I've got an RS Regulate scope mount on the side here. The guy who builds these mounts, good dude. I've kind of helped him from the start with these mounts, and they're kind of the gold standard for side mounts for the AK. The great news about it is they're low enough that with something like a micro, you can still see your iron sights through the bottom field of view of the red dot sight. And you can also, if you have a malfunction or whatever, you can pop the top cover off in case you have to get inside the receiver to clear a malfunction or whatever the case may be, which is a malfunction clearance procedure with the AKs. I need to get the top cover off to get inside the gun to get an empty case or a loose round that's floating around in there. This is one thing that I can do with this side mount on it. Really cool gun. As I said, semi-automatic only. It even has a little hump here that you see for the Russian AK-74s where they're able to keep the trigger unit, the disconnector unit self-contained. And that's one of the ways you spot it, is with the hump right there. This is particular one side folder, like I said, metal side folder. Can't really fold it with the optic in place. The optic has to come off, then you can fold it and latch it in. Has the classic plum furniture, and then also has a little specs here that you see in the plum, which really make it awesome for AK guys like me. These are great shooting guns. I've always enjoyed shooting the AK-74 series. Real soft shooting, in my experience, inherently more accurate than AKs in 7.62x39. The 5.45 is an inherently accurate more cartridge. Either one will get the job done. You got to properly zeroed one with training. They're more than adequately accurate for the task. The M4 M16 series is a more inherently accurate rifle, more inherently accurate platform, to be sure, but you can get the job done for an assault rifle, for a rifle of this type, in 5.45 or 7.62x39, no problem at all. Muzzle brake, very effective. And it's interesting now, you see these, the Russians are even putting these, and other people are even putting these on 7.62x39 guns. They started on 5.45, very controllable muzzle brake. Also known as a flash enhancer, because you get so much flash off of them at night. It's a position disclosure as well as, a compensator. But they're even putting them on 7.62x39 guns based on how effective they are. Overall, cool gun. If you don't have an AK in your collection, by all means you should. I would recommend a 7.62x39 gun. 5.45, unfortunately, has kind of largely died. About the only country around the world that's still using 5.45 is Russia. Most all the other countries in the Warsaw Pact that had 5.45 guns, when the Warsaw Pact collapsed and they began that switch away from the Warsaw Pact, and in many cases joined NATO, they went to 5.56, and 5.45 basically completely went away. Some of the countries never really embraced 5.45 at all. So 5.45 AKs are largely a thing of the past. The only place you still see them in service and see new variants of 5.45 is in Russia, and they've got a lot of cool ones coming out. The AK-12 and whatnot. Of course, they've done the AN-94 and 5.45. So the Russians are staying after that cartridge and are continuing to develop weapons and new weapons in that cartridge, but really they're the only ones. So hope you enjoyed it. Really cool gun. Three favorites for you. The first 22 I ever got, Winchester Model 67A, bolt action, single shot 22. FNFL had a really cool Belgian-made South African contract semi-auto R1 here with a cool story behind it. And now, semi-automatic Russian-made AK-74, one of the very few in the United States. Arsenal USA brought them in. They didn't have them for very long. They sold out, and now these things on Gunbroker and secondary market go for some pretty good money. Have a good one. We'll see you next time right back here. LAV out. Hey, got a little bonus here for you. LAV favorite gun I want to add into the mix. Demaco semi-auto Colt Canada made AR. Now, what's the story on this? Well, you go back to when Canada adopted the M16 and they got the licensing from Colt. They kind of used Demaco, which was essentially, for all intents and purposes, a government-owned arsenal up there, and they put their own little twist on it. They did a lot of things to it that kind of made it their own. All right, they did a few things and they configured the rifle a little bit differently, and the guns have an excellent reputation. I see them overseas. When I see ARs overseas now, generally, in the United States, Colt dominates, and then in the civilian market, you have a lot of other brands. I'm a personal fan of BCM. That's my go-to. But when you go overseas, the two dominant AR brands you see, if it's not a Colt, it's generally either a Colt Canada or a Demaco gun, or you see now the HK416. Those guns dominate. These guns have an excellent reputation. Probably the most famous use of the Colt Canada or Demaco line was by the British SAS. And you'll see a configuration of rifles that were made specifically for those guys with a 16-inch barrel as well as a shorter one. This particular one is a semi-automatic one made specifically for the lower semi-auto, and it has a lot of the cool Colt Canada Demaco features that you only really see up there. This butt stock, this glued on rubber butt plate, but it has like this pebble grain texture on the side in the cheek piece area. Also, you have this ambi sling loop situation in the back that has this triangular effect, which is pretty cool in and of itself. They have some unique lower markings. The markings you see here, you have the maple leaf, of course the serial number, and then down here you got Made in Canada under license from Colt Manufacturing, and then you have the Demaco D. Pretty cool. They have the selector markings only on one side. They only have it on this side. They have the S and R for repetition. And then on this side you have an ambi safety, but it's shortened. You have a shortened ambi safety, once again kind of unique to Colt Canada in that respect. So the right-handed shooter, you have an ambi safety for a lefty to use, but the right-handed shooter, it doesn't dig into his trigger finger. Now this upper is part of one of their monolithic uppers. They embrace the monolithic upper concept pretty heavily in Colt Canada, and this is one of the ones that they offer. They have several different flavors. They made some for British SAS, they've made some for various contracts around, and then they offer a lightened one now on the market. And this is one of the ones they had, and if you notice, once again, unique flash suppressor setup. So what they've done is they've done a lot of little things up there to answer the mail for various customers around the globe that might want something a particular way. And in some cases, they'll use stuff off the aftermarket accessory market, but in some cases, they'll do stuff in-house, like that flash suppressor that you really don't see anywhere else. There's also other ones that have an ambi charging handle, which is unique in design that you don't see elsewhere. The place to really check these out, if you're into this cool, obscure AR style stuff, this Colt Canada stuff, is volume 2 of my AR-15 Vickers guidebook. We got a big Colt Canada section in there. And guns like this, as well as many others, are in there highlighting the stuff that the Canadians are doing to make things a little bit different and unique. And by the way, wouldn't really be interesting if it wasn't for the fact that their guns are very, very good guns. They're accurate, they're reliable, they have an outstanding reputation. So that's what makes this so cool. It's not your run-of-the-mill AR. You're not going to see anything else like this down here in the United States because it is so unique. Has a classic flair to it, and the Canadians kind of do their own thing and march to their own tune. Pretty cool all the way around. Colt Canada, otherwise known as Demaco, semi-automatic AR. Hope you enjoyed it.
To get 10% off all plans, use promo code LAV10 at CCW Safe's website and go to CCW Safe's YouTube channel for more great content.
Hey, Larry Vickers here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Click here to subscribe to the Vickers Tactical channel and take time out to check out some of our other favorite videos.